Okay, so I remixed, so I don't necessarily have the exact color we had before, but that doesn't matter. And we work our way around our eye. And keep reloading as you're putting your base coat color on. We want it to be what we call the wet coat, right? So if you try to push a little bit of paint around, it's going to be dry. So we're going to, and you're going to have your photo handy, and keep it close to your picture so that you don't have to kind of flip back and forth. So I can pick up my base coat, or my shading color, which is the wild berry. And you see that he has also behind his eye. So those are places that we want to apply it. And if your brush has lots, give your brush a little wipe. And I'm just coming back and chiseling it in. You want to have little tiny strokes when you're chiseling it in, okay? So just little tiny ones. So that's going to appear to be like feathers. If you pull too long, then it doesn't have the same effect for you. Yeah, it'll look more like fur. So if you run out of dampness from your wet coat, then you can just pick up some more of your base coat color. Now we know that the wing top or the wing shoulder is going to come here. I haven't got it drawn on, but I will apply my dark around there and just scratch that in. Come down here underneath his wing. And we know that he pretty much has it coming all the way out. So you look at your colored photo and you can see that it's all the way around like so. So because this has dried, I did a little chit-chatting a lot. So you see how if I pick up a bit more and I just chisel it towards this, it'll blend into our wet. Put a little of that light back so it's not too much. And you just back and forth chisel little tiny strokes so that they blend into each other. We want to have a nice shadow, and that has to come out far enough because we're going to darken it, right? We're going to come with a little bit more afterwards. Okay. So now I give my brush a wipe. I'm going to pick up a little of the baby blush, and I can come in here. Now the baby blush can be added after we do the darkening or before. It doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to go for now because I know I had just re-wet there, so it's still wet. So it can take that in. We can always go back and dry brush and add a bit more later. But you see the little tiny strokes that I'm talking about. We just want to see how that looks like little layers of feather, and never even. Don't have a straight line. So it's just little uneven strokes. And you can see that it makes it look like there's some lighter feathers, there's some medium feathers. And I'm not going to do the top of his wing until I get the dark on, because sometimes you get a little carried away with that. So now I'm going to just pick up, I wiped my brush, I didn't clean it. And sometimes because I've been into the light, by not cleaning it, it might need to have a bit of cleaning, but you'll tell if that's not too bad. I'm okay with that. And remember, we want to come a little of that. And I don't have too much, and I'm not pressing too hard. So I just want to strengthen behind there. I want to strengthen up behind his wing, which at this point is just imaginary. And you can always go back and dry brush some more of the dark in if you want. I just want this to kind of fade its way up, come down, and you see that it's pretty much all the way around when you're looking at your picture, your little reference picture. And if you feel like, oh, it is just too dry for me, I can't get it to go anywhere, you can clean your brush. So if I clean my brush out and I blot it on my towel, it still has a little tiny bit of moisture in there now. So when I pick up my dark color on just part of the brush, and I keep that dark. I want to control and know where the dark is. The moisture part of my brush, do you see how that will allow this to not be so darn heavy and look like a trim? So that little bit of moisture, if you've, and I'll just turn my brush around here. Just nice and soft. And he is gonna, they all are gonna get a little bit of shading later on. So if he ends up looking a little darker in your, don't worry about that. And you're always gonna have a different strength of the dark mix too. Like I might have had a little more soft black in it. I put a little bit heavy out when I put it out. So, but you can tell now that I need to put a little more of my highlight in there. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to see the little choppy strokes though, right?
I wasn't doing that. I was doing them more.
Doing long ones?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it makes a difference.
Yeah. I'm really good at trimming.
So, and you see just that little bit of moisture in my brush because I cleaned it helps that it's not going to look solid on top. It lets it scratch in lightly. So I'll go ahead and I'll do with the base coat, I'll do his shoulder, and then we'll go to the other part of the wing after, because we'll just work with these colors right now. So, and it doesn't matter if I unevenly get into here, because we're going to be I'm going to put those little tiny pink strokes that are in the end after. I'll put those in after. So I need my first color, that is my shading color. And now, of course, we have a nice wet because it's just a tiny little area. So we feather that in. It's lighter up at the top on this guy. I don't want that light in there. See how light really turns almost white when it goes against our dark area? Mm-hmm. So I'll scratch some dark back over that again. But those little tiny feathers on the top of his wing, just scratch your way back, wipe my brush off, and I'll take some of the dark. And it's going to be just kind of along here. I can put a bit at the back too if I want. There. So there's his wing. We're going to do the bottom part and then we'll put the little pink strokes over top. All right. I'm going to take my 1/4 inch flat and I'm going to double load. Now we've done this on the other feathers, other tails, pardon me. We're going to take it and we're going to slide along the bottom. So you're looking at it and it slides along and up to the blue. Press a little harder. So as you press, remember you're giving the width to that feather.
Is that gray?
This is
Morning mist.
morning mist.
Morning mist.
Soft black and morning mist. So I'll slide these ones up there. I don't want them looking so perfect, so I'm going to slide a bit more soft black in between. There. I like them to come off the edge of the bird if you can. Then the next one, I'm double loading colonial blue and winter blue. Pardon me. We're not going to pull these feathers very far. So we just pull these little...
You want them into the soft black area.
Yeah, so they overlap and give you the bit of the feather there.
So you're
now,
not base coating them?
No, they were base coated ahead. So now we're, wet coat is what you mean? Yeah, okay, no. So I'm picking up on my dirty brush a little bit of soft black and I'm just going to slide it back there. You see that little dark, pardon me, tiny little dark bit of a feather on the blue. Now, the ends of these guys aren't looking bright enough, so I'm going to retouch up them. There. See how they got a little bit brighter? Now I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to just side load it in that baby blush. And I'm just going to pull with the paint down and the water part of my brush upwards. We'll pull some little overhanging light feathers. That's that, okay? Do that, do that.
Okay, and you have your white.
So I'm going to work with 2 brushes. I'm going to wet coat my top section using my 1/4 inch lunar blender. And it's okay to go wispy off the edges like that, because we're going to be blending them, right? So now I'm going to take my warm white on my second brush. And I'm going to bring the warm white up to there, and I'm just going to blend between the two. Back and forth a couple of times. I'm wanting, and I'm not pressing hard, guys. I'm trying to get rid of, and I'll give my brush a wipe. I'm trying to get rid of. Now all of a sudden, now all of a sudden, Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd are doing this video. I'm trying to get rid of that line between the two. Okay, so we want it to kind of fade down. Now I am going to clean my brush quickly and pick up some khaki tan, and that's what we're going to bring in the bottom of the white up. And just nice and soft. I'm not pressing hard, and I think sometimes people press a little too hard, and then they don't have any paint left on the brush or anything, and they over blend and pull out all the wet paint from underneath. So I'm going to put a little more white here, and we're going to be able to dry brush more white on this afterwards as well. If we need to strengthen up white, or if we feel we need to bring a little more of that, the peachy, like I've got my peach brush still in my hand because I used the white one to blend upwards. So see how I can strengthen that peach a little bit. So I'm going to get you to do that. We do have to do some work while this is wet up in here, but I think we can do this part and re-wet up here. Okay. So we'll go with that part for now. So we're going to wet coat again on his head.
Wet coat, Lucille.
All of the videos start with me going, so we're going to, because we're doing it here and I'm starting it there, but on the video it doesn't look like it's starting. I'm just going to kind of soften that there because I'm wet coating here, but I don't really want to do anything right there. So I'm going to take my dirty brush, pick up on the corner so I can take and bring a little of burnt orange. So the brush has it on the corner. So when I say that, that's letting you know that the other corner has the base coat that we just wet coat with. So that color is able to, you see when the brush is down, when I'm going like that, my light color, base coat color is coming back and forth. So just so you can see, it's like it's double loaded. So we need to come with some of that dark orange, and you see that it comes out the back of his eye as well. So we have it going up like that, out the back of his eye, so from the front to the back, blend it away, and he's got, let's call it a cheek. So we're going to come around basically from under the beak over to the top of that gray feathery mark. Okay, so that's where we're going to have his cheek. So I've just shaped that. I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to pick up a little tiny bit on the dirty brush. I just wiped it to get rid of the excess. But we're going to pick up, we're going to pick up See, I'm going to scratch in a little bit of moon yellow highlight. But my brush is still dirty. And I can put a little bit of that on his cheek. It's going to give him a little bit of lift on the cheek. Just a little bit of highlight heading south. He is, maybe it's heading north, I don't know. He is going to have brown coming in here, and the brown is going to join that afterwards, our bittersweet. But we're going to dry scratch that bittersweet on. So I'm going to let you do that right now. My 1/4 inch flat shader, double load with graphite and the almondine khaki tan mix. On top of the bottom of this feather or wing, whichever we're calling it, tail or, and I'm going to bring them off the edge so that they're, so I'm coming right up to the gray one. I double load again, fresh double load, same colors. Because of the underneath base coat color that we had there, they will appear different. We'll see the graphite a lot darker on this one because this one had the gray.
Right.
Now, if you, I'm having a brain freeze here. You can come all the way up here. See, we're going to add these little feathers here. Just one row. I'm going to add. And they are nest height. So I'm going to add this one row with the same colors. Do you see that they're sort of like a curved little feather, like a loop? Oops, now I've over blended that guy. There, I'll give him an edge. Okay, so we're going to do that.
Okay.
All right, go and do that.
And your mix is about 1-to-1 for the...
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to work on the top of his head. And so, of course, I brought my peachy color back a little bit further. So I'll bring my khaki tan when I'm doing my wet coat in a bit more. I think he's
so wet coat,
closer.
you always add water?
No.
No.
No, a wet coat means we're going to work on it while it's wet. So it's already base coated, and we're going to put another coat on top because we are working on this while it's wet. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of bittersweet chocolate. I'm using my 1/8 this time, and I'm going to just scratch that bittersweet in where it is seen in your photo. So I'll put it along there. There it comes right almost to the eye there. I'll put it along and I'll just softly scratch those in.
You don't want it totally blended though.
No, we want it to look a little bit feathery. I'm going to wipe my brush. I can even add a little of the dark if I hadn't have wiped my brush. I could have added a little bit. Just a little along the outer back maybe, because he's so white there, my board. Mm-hmm. Now I'm wiping the brush and I'm taking some of my almondine mix.
The mix.
Yeah, the mix. And I'm going to scratch that highlight inwards. Now we're just going to scratch this almost feathery. It's just little scratches though, where we're blending this into the top of those feathers. Now I can make it look a little cleaner with a flat brush after if I want to feathery it a bit more. I think I'd like a little more light on top of his head. Yeah, that's a bit better. Now I'll clean out my brush good because you'll see the dark that's elsewhere on the bird. Now I'm taking my bittersweet and it's like a dry scratch, almost like a dry brush, right? And we are going to darken our dark areas. And you might have to go over it a couple of times. I would rather go over a couple of times, let it dry in between, than get it heavier than I want it to be. So we come around the eye here. He's got a fair bit of dark back there. Nice, soft, scratchy. And you see how you're going to darken. It's like a dry brush scratch almost. You can darken all of that dark area where we put in the burnt orange. It adds the next layer on top of that. But you're not going too crazy. We're not wanting to get that dark all down here. So bring it in here, scratch it in, and then I'm going to dry it and come up there again, because if you look at your picture and a little back here, we want it to be a little bit stronger in the dark. So I'll just hit it with the dryer for a quick second. It doesn't take too much. It's not a big area. I've got bittersweet back on my brush again. And I'm just gonna kind of scratch that in there. I'm gonna get rid of that peach I've got over the edge there too. But you see that little bit of dark? It's making a difference, and it's going to make a difference here too. I'm just going to softly, I don't have too much. I did wipe the brush a bit, but not as much as for dry brush, you know. Like, I just want to bring a little feathery, scratchy look. So you see the difference that little bit of extra dark has made. You can darken a little bit more, almost this outer edge. It could be done with a bit of shading as well. So if you'd rather shade that in, you can. But just darken that. Now his beak, of course, is going to get fixed up, and it comes onto the face. The beaks all come onto the face of the bird. So the difference that has made now is substantial. It really shapes his face nicely. I think he could have a little more there as well. Alrighty. I'm also going to dry brush a little of my bittersweet coming from the back end of his belly. So that bottom end of the belly we'll darken up with some of this bittersweet dry brush. Just strengthen that up a wee bit. Alrighty. So we're going to take and we're going to wet coat our belly. So we've got this coat on, and I'm going to wipe my brush a bit. I'm going to pick up some of the Royal Navy, and I'm going to come from the bottom upwards and just nice and soft, sort of gently scratch that upwards. I'm going to come, I think I'll pick up a bit of fresh right where I had blotted on my palette, and I'm going to come from the top and scratch a bit downwards. And you can come right into there. Now I'll clean my brush, and we would be going into Royal Navy normally, but I'd rather go into the white. So I've cleaned my brush and I picked up white, so I can just nice and softly smooth back and forth. So you see how soft this is blending our nice mix. Pick up a little more. Every time I want to pick up a bit more of my white, I have to give my brush a wipe off on my toweling, because you see how as I go, I'm picking up my Royal Navy, right? So if I want it to be white in the middle, and I'll dry brush more white here later in the middle, because that'll make a huge difference. So I've cleaned that up. I'm going to clean my brush out. It's really important to get rid of your white. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of my deep midnight blue. And I'm just going to scratch some of that nice and soft, like a dry brush almost. Just scratch that on here. I'll come back when it's dry, and I'll dry brush a bit more in there. It'll go on a little easier. But we just want to, pardon me, we just want to strengthen this section underneath here. Now, as everything gets, the top part gets colors into there, this won't seem as overly vivid. I might put a little of my dark along that edge there a bit too. Just give them a little bit of a turn to that. There. So we're going to dry brush a little more white in there, and I'll dry brush a little more of that when it's dry. Instead of starting with his head, we're going to do the tail, the wing, and then that section that way, because the head kind of rests on there, so we won't have to fart around with it again after to do something to it. So we're going to wet coat our tail with sapphire blue. I'm going to side load my dirty brush, and I'm going to take with Royal Navy. I'm going to take the Royal Navy from the top down and chisel downwards. If you lose your strength, always reload. So we chisel downwards. I'm going to pick up winter blue on the light section, which would be the sapphire section of my brush, and I'm going to start from off the edge, and I'm going to pull up, and as you lose your pop of the winter blue, reload so that you get those nice tail feathers. Wipe your brush. We're going to repeat for the next section underneath those loops. So go right up into that loop section so that you have, and this is going to be your wing, so we'll just bring it off at an end. I'm going to side load. Again, I wipe my brush so quick. I'm going to side load from the top coming down. So you're repeating the very same steps that you just did. And you see that we're going to go on a bit of an angle with this. Side load, dirty brush into winter blue. Nice, strong tips to our feathers. And you can reload just where you've flattened your brush. I keep forgetting about that. And if I want a little partial feather coming from here and make these wings a little double layered, that works good. Okay, so we've got our feathers on our wings coming off the end. I'm going to just top that guy up a bit, and that's that. So what we're going to do is I've double loaded my flat shader, and we're going to pat blend like we did on one of the other birds. So we're just putting nice dark up top. Then I'm going to pick up a little bit of winter blue on my sapphire side of my brush. So we now have the brush loaded like so. This one has kind of loopy little feathers. So we're just going to side load with the paint down, light down, pardon me, right over the edge where our piece is, so that we are doing a nice little layer. You can choose to go in between if you want, so that they don't all perfectly line onto each other, or you can have them line up. Whatever happens, happens. They're little feathers. So we're going with these little feathers, and we'll just finish off with just a little, working it up towards there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to wet coat, and let's go for the top of his head. If we do the whole thing, it's going to dry on us. The eye is there so we know where it is, not so we don't get anything on it. So I've wet coat, I wipe my brush, I'm going to pick up my Royal Navy, and I'm going to start from the back, and I'm going to scratch forward. So we're getting our nice dark color worked in to the head. I want to make sure that I have, and I'm going to pick up a bit more of the color, come from the eye This is really going to be above the cheek, right? So we just nice and softly work that in. I'll come over to the front section with what's left on my brush and work that in. And that comes along in front of the eye as well. I'm going to wipe off my brush and I'm going to pick up some winter blue that I didn't have out and scuff it off a bit, and we're going to go from the middle, more like a dry brush. Nice and soft. And you can control how high up you go with that so that you don't end up having no round to the back of your head. I'm going to put in a bit more and nice and softly pat it, almost like I say, it's wet paint, but it's applying it almost like a dry brush, you know? See how soft I can get that into there? We can come back later and dry brush a little warm white in here too. But it's got to be good and dry. So I'm just softly bringing that forward. You should have your photo fairly close so that you're able to use it for your reference. Nice and soft, and again I'll come back and dry brush when it's really good and dry. So now I'm going to wet coat the bottom of his cheek, and this is going to take care of the top, make it nice, clean up that edge. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up my Royal Navy, and I didn't want to go right down into there, give him a little goatee. I'm going to bring my Royal Navy and just kind of fade that outwards. I'll have a little right there. Just fade it out, wipe my brush off. Now I'm getting into that winter blue again. Scuff it on my palette, on my towel. Our towels take a good beating here. And I'm going to apply that to create his nice top to his, we'll call it his cheek. And I'll just pat it nice and soft and kind of just scuff it down into there. I'm using the whole brush. I'm not making feathery strokes like we did on the other guys. This guy here is a little soft, fuzzy, cute guy. Just more of a dry brush one. And like I say, we'll come back. I can come up here now. This is dry. And I can just kind of scuff in some more of that winter blue. I still will come back after and probably put a little warm white dry brush. But I'm just scuffing this off into here, getting them a little brighter while I'm in the area. All right, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a little bit of warm white on my wrecked little lunar blender, and I'm going to come in here and dry brush more to the center. Do you see how that's going to round his little head more? And on his cheek, I need to pick up a bit more paint. Pick it up, scuff it off on your towel. We are dry brushing, but you still need to have paint. So we want it to be brighter in the center. That's going to round his little head. And while I've got whatever left on the brush, I'll put a little along the back here just to kind of give a highlight there. Now we're going to take our 10-0 liner. I've cleaned up my eye so it's rebase coated and it's not covered in blue. And I'm going to take and I'm going to do just a little tiny curved line, little highlight, and I blot with my finger above the eye. That's going to die down a little bit, but that is winter blue, just a little winter blue. I could come down a little lower there actually, now that I look at it. Right from kind of above the little cheek. and just fade off here. There we go. So we'll do the work on the eyes and all of our beaks at the same time. So we'll just hold that off for now. But that's where we want to be with this bird right now. So we want to dry brush the warm white, make sure his eye is cleaned up, and then we're going to put that nice little tiny highlight line of winter blue behind the eye.